So I was doing a bit of math this morning, and I took the number of musicians on stage, roughly about 35 musicians, and I multiplied that number by 25,000. And the reason I chose 25,000 is that that's a conservative estimate of the number of hours of individual practice that went in, before lessons, before rehearsals, before concerts, individual practice alone in a concert, in a practice room. That actually amounts to about 105 years. So you're hearing over a century of practice. And that's to say, that's even before the centuries and millennia of cultural practices that we have inherited from our teachers. I would say that musicians know something about practice. When we started Street Symphony about 12 years ago, we wanted to practice love through music for a community that we felt was fundamentally unloved. We wanted to make music in Skid Row clinics and shelters and county jails. We wanted to play for the people who we thought of, frankly, as those people, the people who are underserved, the people who we don't know how to talk to. But in the practice of giving, we learned a practice of receiving. In the practice of being able to grapple with the darkness that we encountered in people who were living in Skid Row, we started to grapple with the practice of encountering the darkness inside ourselves. And in Skid Row, we learned that we need the darkness in order to see the stars. We went into re-entry centers to spend time with people who had been convicted of life sentences, had been paroled after life sentences in California state prisons. And from these individuals, from conversations with them, we learned about forgiveness. We learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting pain or trauma, but rather it's choosing a new identity that transcends that pain and trauma. Skid Row became a laboratory of human practice for us. And we learned about recovery from people we called addicts. We learned about forgiveness from people we called convicts. We learned eventually that there was no us and them. There was only us. In giving, we learned how to receive. From people who were unhoused, we learned that a home wasn't just a roof over our heads, but a home was something that we practiced. Culture is something that we practice. From those people who we said have nothing, we learned how to have enough. Give it up for Son Estimados, this amazing son jarocho ensemble you just heard. From learning from and making music myself, and inspired so deeply by my mentors in the son jarocho tradition, I've learned a certain word called compromiso. Now, compromiso might sound like compromise, which a dear friend of mine who's on this stage said, in a relationship, compromise is a four-letter word, because neither party is really getting what they deserve. But in the son jarocho tradition, compromiso literally means compromiso, with a promise, that we make a promise. Street Symphony is that shared promise. It is that shared promise to show up to the 25,000 hours, at least, that it takes before we are willing to stand before our teachers and mentors and audiences and offer our gifts to the world. But it is also a promise to show up to those communities at the same time. It is a shared mutual practice of change, because we are all practicing change wherever we are. I would like to invite you all, if you are moved by anything that you see or hear or feel today, to join us in the promise of supporting the work of Street Symphony by making a financial gift of any size. You can scan the QR code on the back of your program and go straight to our website where you can make a gift. You can support the music and the programs like the Messiah Project that you're hearing, but you can also support programs like the kinds of programs you'll hear about later in this program, such as Midnight Strings and Women's Voices, which are guitar and songwriting workshops, which take place every week in the Skid Row community, led by teaching artists who are on this stage, who are incredible musicians. And we want to create more of this work in the world. And we also want to create more music with all of you. So please consider joining us at Street Symphony today, here at the Crossroads at this program. So now, on with our program. Thank you so much for being here.